occupying till he comes at Southwest Prophecy Ministries.
Thank you, Brother David. In keeping with our ministry purpose, today's guest is Bill Salus. Bill's an expert at explaining the prophetic relevance of current Middle East and world events, and his freelance articles have been featured on numerous venues. He's written a book and produced a DVD titled The Now Prophecies, which is the basis for today's program. Here's Dr. David Snitker and Carol Rushton and their guest, Bill Salus.
It is a great privilege to have Bill Salus on the broadcast today and next week to discuss his latest book and DVD entitled The Now Prophecies. Bill is one of the leading prophecy scholars in our day and is a headliner at prophecy conferences across America. I believe that God has gifted Bill with an ability to understand Bible prophecy and relate it to the day in which we lived. I'm joined on the broadcast today by Carol Rushton, our Vice President of Social Media. Carol is very knowledgeable regarding Middle Eastern affairs, having lived in Jerusalem for 8 years. I was honored to do some broadcasts with Bill Salus when I was at Southwest Radio Church, so I could not pass up the opportunity to do more broadcasts with Bill regarding his latest project. Bill, welcome to our show today.
Well, it's great to be with both of you, David and Carol.
Well, it's great to have you in studio today. And I'd like to begin, for those of you who may not know about your ministry, for Bill at the outset to just tell us a little bit about your ministry and for sure give us your web address.
Oh, well, thank you, David. Yeah, the ministry is called Prophecy Depot Ministries, and the web address is prophecydepot.com, like Home Depot, prophecydepot.com. And it's a prophecy-based ministry that is intended to lead people to a faith in Jesus Christ and focus on the soon return of Jesus Christ in both the rapture and then subsequently he will be coming back in the second coming, and he will establish his messianic kingdom. So we're trying to keep the focus on how you can lead people to Jesus Christ through biblical prophecy.
Amen. Well, you're certainly not new to the area of Bible prophecy. In fact, I have a couple of your books nearby that I have read and have found a great value in them, as well as your latest effort. Tell us a little bit about how you became interested in this whole subject of Bible prophecy, and then why you decided to create this DVD and book with such an interesting title.
Okay, well, I was kind of late in life when I got interested when I came to know the Lord. I was actually around 37 years old. This takes us back to around 1990. I'd been through a lot of things in my life and really wasn't interested in anything about God or called God or anything like that. But I had a successful business. Right next door to it, with bearing and adjoining walls, was a Calvary Chapel church. And it was interesting. I got to become friends with the pastor there. I played on the men's softball team with him. And he said to me, Bill, you need to come next door. And we have a guy there named Chuck Missler, who many of your listeners may know is a Bible prophecy teacher expert. And he is going to teach on the book of Revelation. Now, at the time, Chuck Missler lived in the same area I did, which was Big Bear Lake, California. And I had no idea who he was or anything like that. But I took them up on the offer, and I started going to the church. I would work until 5 o'clock, shut my door, walk next door, go into the church, and Chuck Missler started teaching on the book of Revelation. And as I went through the book with him and the other fellow congregants there, I became aware that the God of the Bible, who knows the end from the beginning, is the one true God. And I said, oh my goodness, this is what I've been searching for. Didn't think I wanted anything to do with it, but now I realize I need to have everything to do with it. And I started attending fellowship on Sunday there at that Calvary Chapel, and I accepted the Lord that year. Now, it was interesting that year there was a big earthquake in the area, and Chuck Missler moved. He went to Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, and that's where he established his ministry there. Of course, I was at that point like a new Christian, so I bought every one of his CDs and DVDs, and then I found other people I was interested in, Dr. Arnold Fruchtenbaum and things like that, and I started saturating everything I could like a sponge about Bible prophecy. And before I would go to work, I would spend 2 or 3 hours a morning studying this stuff, and I just really got interested in Bible prophecy, and now, of course, I'm teaching it at this point.
Wow. Amazing God's grace, putting you just at the right place, God's servant to touch your heart and move you in the direction of this wonderful ministry. Well, in the the now prophecies, you describe three types of prophecy in your DVD. So tell us about these three types of prophecy and give us some examples of each one.
Yes. Well, there's quite a bit of unfulfilled biblical prophecy for the end times that we need to discuss and understand. And a lot of these prophecies are all now beginning to converge. But what's most interesting to me is what could affect my generation, my family, my grandchildren. I'm interested in all biblical prophecy, and I think students of Bible prophecy should be, because it's important for us to have a good overview of the Bible and prophecy. But I want to know what could happen now. What are the things, I call them the now prophecies, that are either imminent or have very minimal preconditions, meaning they could happen now. And at least we should be ready for them to happen now. Whether they will happen in a year or a month or 2 years, only God knows. But we don't want to be caught off guard when they do happen. Now, there's two other categories I put into the book and DVD, which are the next prophecies and the last prophecies. Now, the next prophecies have some fairly significant preconditions before they would actually find their fulfillment. They need the now prophecies to find fulfillment before the next prophecies will kick in. And then we've got the last prophecies where you're getting into like the tribulation period, the judgments in the book of Revelation, the Antichrist, things like that. Of course, preconditions there as well. So we've got a sequence of now prophecies. They will be followed by big prophecies of the next prophecies. These are all big events globally impacting every one of these. And then, of course, we got to get ready for that tribulation period. Now, I'm not saying that believers today need to be ready for the tribulation. I personally believe in a rapture. What's one of the now prophecies? I call it the vanishing of the Christians in the book. Mm-hmm. But, basically I'm trying to let people know what could be happening when you wake up tomorrow morning. Are you ready for it?
Mm-hmm. Now, just a personal observation is I, of course, have viewed your DVD and read your books. It seems to me that the now prophecies are perhaps some of the more puzzling prophecies in the Scripture, because they pop up here and there, something in Jeremiah, something in Ezekiel, something in Isaiah. And sometimes it's hard, at least for me, to establish a time frame or a sequence of events. So I think in your description of these, I think you're covering, in my view, some of the more difficult prophecies in the Bible, mm-hmm. in terms of particularly the sequence of events. When we come to the book of Revelation, I believe that the sequence of events is laid out in chronological order, so we don't have too much difficulty establishing sequence. But some of these now prophecies, the destruction of Damascus, the Elam prophecies, the destruction of Egypt, somehow, putting those in the right sequence really does, in my view, require careful exegesis and really some good deductive skills.
I concur with you 100% on that, David. And I do try to sequence chronologically biblical prophecies, and especially the now prophecies, as I would suspect they could unfold. But it is speculative. And I would tell the listeners that, I'm not saying that this will happen first and then the next thing would happen second. But I try to give them a roadmap as to how these things would be. Now, how do we determine what's a now prophecy, what's a next, what's a last? Well, there's certain things you can conclude by understanding the details of a prophecy. For instance, now prophecies, we can look and say, look at the events and details of the prophecy. Could they happen now? Okay, that's one way. Mm-hmm. The other way is you look at the details of a prophecy and say, are there preconditions that prohibit it? And do certain prophecies have to find fulfillment that would facilitate the appropriate theater and stage for that prophecy to find fulfillment? So without boring, the listeners with a long, drawn-out study of how I concluded these things, I explained some of this in the Now Prophecies book. But the Now Prophecies book in DVD is written in a format that's pretty easy to understand. It's for everyone to be able to get value from Bible prophecy, because Bible prophecy is for everyone, not just for the elite or the scholarly. And these are conclusions that I've drawn from earlier works with years of research that are available. Psalm 83 book I've got, and my Nuclear Showdown in Iran book dealing with an ancient prophecy in Elam, and I've written a few other books. So people are invited to, of course, get those for a deeper, richer understanding, to enhance their understanding of the now prophecies. But so the conditions of the now prophecies, we can look at them one by one, and we can simply say, could this happen now? And we will find that it really could.
Mm-hmm. Now, there are 3 segments in your DVD. Share what those segments are.
Yes, we've got about 3 hours of teaching and information on the DVD. And I introduce with a about 4-minute spot about what the content of the DVD will be. And so that's called the introduction. And then we have the first lesson. It's a PowerPoint presentation called Preparing for the Coming Prophecies. I'm trying to take people to the understanding of the prophecies and how do you prepare for these types of prophecies. And they are the now prophecies. They correspond with the now prophecies inside the book. Good maps and images and good teaching for them to have and understand, and an encapsulation of really the research in the book. And then the next lesson is revealing the ancient prophecy of Elam, and it's dealing with Iran. I believe there's a nuclear prophecy in the book of Jeremiah, and I get into talking about that prophecy, why it's relevant. I actually think it's probably one of the next prophecies to find fulfillment in the now prophecy list. And I get into the nuclear showdown aspects of it, what's going on with those crazy Iranian leaders over there, but also the spiritual aspects of it. There's a revival going on in Iran, a spiritual battle, a showdown between Islam and Christianity. It's the number 1 growing evangelical population in the world. Fascinating teaching on that DVD. So it's very informational, and it's very timely and very relevant right now.
Oh, it definitely is. Every day's headlines has something to do with Iran, the instability over there, their nuclear weapons program. I mean, it's very timely. We're talking today with Bill Salus regarding his brand new book and DVD entitled The Now Prophecies. I'd like Carol to ask some questions regarding some of these now prophecies.
Yes, Bill, I found your DVD to be jam-packed with so much information. It was very illuminating to me for you to hear you explain these prophecies, things that I never thought about before. You made it so clear, but you have a lot of information, so I think our listeners will really be very interested in getting the book, at least the DVD, because you just have so much information that we cannot present here. But on your DVD, from your reading of the scriptures, Bill, you say that there are 3 events that must occur before the Gog and Magog war of Ezekiel 38. Now, the first one you list is the regathering of Israel. Now, this is definitely a fulfillment of end times Bible prophecy and something that is happening right before our very eyes. And one of the things that I'm very concerned about is why most of the church ignore this. So why do you think that most Christians or mainline denominations ignore this clear and definite fulfillment of Bible prophecy that we can see happening right now?
Well, that's a really important question that we need to address, because God has some major plans with his timepiece of Israel in these last days. I want to thank you also for your complimenting on the DVD. A lot of important information in there. I've tried to put it in a way where it is pretty easily understandable, because it is some complex information. So thank you for that, Carol. First of all, what I try to do in the DVD, and this will help answer this question, I try to put mankind on the timeline, God's prophetic timeline right now. And where we are right now is what's relevant. We need to know what has God said about right now, the days in which we live. And we are somewhere between 2 monumental events, prophetically speaking. One is the rebirth of the nation of Israel, which you pointed out in 1948, May 14th, 1948. We're 68 years closer to the next marquee event, the monumental bookend, which is Ezekiel 38. And like you said, and that's the event where the Lord is going to make his holy name known in the midst of his people Israel, key word there, not the midst of his people the church, but the midst of his people Israel. They shall not profane it anymore. The nation shall know he's the Lord, the Holy One in Israel. Major event. God has chosen to let the world know he's the one true God of the Bible. And we're getting really close to that event. But like you said, Carol, I believe there are certain things that have to happen before that event can find fulfillment. And one of those, of course, if you're going to uphold your holy name through the midst of your people Israel, there has to be an Israel, right? So this prophecy would never have made sense for the 2,000 years before there was an Israel. But now there is an Israel, and we're heading toward this monumental event. Why does the church not understand that Israel is a prophecy being fulfilled, the existence of Israel. God's conspicuous fingerprints are all over the nation of Israel. It fulfilled numerous Bible prophecies. Why is the church missing this? It is such an important thing in the Bible. Well, we've got this thing called replacement theology, which has plagued the church for about 2,000 years. And what has happened is that in a nutshell, what replacement theology is that they believe that when the Jews rejected Jesus Christ as a Savior, that God rejected the Jewish people. And that's why they were sent out into the nations of the world. And that now all the promises and prophecies regarding with Israel find principal application with the church, God's people, so to speak, now they would say. Now this is in the process of this developing, going way back to the time of, Augustine and even before then, Origen. It's gotten worse and worse so that by the time you get to the pulpits today, they don't think Israel's relevant. And so when you start to discard Israel, you start to discard tons of Bible prophecy. You either try to put the church in there or you allegorize it or whatever the case is, it gets all convoluted and you don't understand the significance of the existence of the Jewish state today, which to me is a major witnessing tool to be able to tell people about. You see that country over there, that those Jewish people that Hitler tried to destroy, that Pharaoh tried to destroy, and you go on, and that land that was desolate for all those years, and here they are back. By the way, that fulfills numerous Bible prophecies, folks. It's exciting. The God of the Bible's at work right now. But anyway, I think that's one of my main concerns, that they have allegorized Bible prophecy and taken Israel out of it.
Well, I remember the story of one of the czars of Russia asking one of his advisors for proof that there is a God. And his response is, "Sir, the Jews." I mean, that is so clear that Israel and the Jews being back in the land today, it's an absolute miracle. And all you have to do is go over there and visit the land of Israel and see what they've done. The desert blooming as a rose. I mean, these are things that are just a clear and definite fulfillment of prophecy, and I want to thank you for bringing that out. Another thing that you say that will probably need to happen before the Ezekiel 38 war is what you call the Psalm 83 war or coalition. Now, when I've always read Psalm 83, it never occurred to me that this was talking about something that was going to happen in the future. I always thought of it as something that had happened to Israel in the past. So I was very interested, particularly to have to hear your explanation about that. So what do you think that the Psalm 83 war has to occur before the war of Ezekiel 8? And how does that fit in with Bible prophecy?
Okay. Well, I believe Psalm 83 is a now prophecy. In the chapter I write about it called The Final Concluding Arab-Israeli War, which is in essence what Psalm 83 describes. We have to understand the details of Ezekiel 38 as to why I would put Psalm 83 as a different prophecy and why I would put it as a preceding prophecy from Ezekiel 38 and 39. And basically, in a summary version, in Ezekiel 38, verses 8 through 13, we have some conditions that describe Israel existing in at the time of the invasion, when Russia comes in the Ezekiel 38 invasion. And what it says there is that Israel will be regathered from the nations in the latter days back into the places that were desolate or wasteland, and they will dwell in the center of the land. And right now we would give a check mark to those things. We see that's been going on for the last 68 years. And the land Ezekiel was talking about is the promised land, which was given to Abraham in Genesis 15:18, from the river of Egypt, the Nile, to the river Euphrates, which courses through Iraq and Syria. And Israel's sort of in the center of that area. But what it goes on to say, conditions that I don't believe have been met yet, is that Israel must be dwelling securely without walls, bars, nor gates, and they must be in receipt of this enormous amount of plunder and booty, great livelihood inside of their country, because this is what Russia is coming after, is this livelihood and booty, plunder and booty, it says. Well, Israel's not dwelling securely right now because there's a group of Arab countries with terrorist populations within those countries that share common borders with Israel. I call them an inner circle. And they are listed in Psalm 83, verses 6 through 8, by their ancient names. I'll share with your listeners in a minute who they are because it's important to put a face on them today. But they happen to be entirely different population groups than those described in a very well-specified prophecy of Ezekiel 38, where we have 9 members in Russia's coalition. We've got 10 members in the Psalm 83 Confederacy, and they're entirely different groups. One of the reasons they're different prophecies. Well, anyway, Ezekiel 38 says Israel's got to be dwelling securely, but Israel cannot dwell securely because of their ancient nemesis, these people in Psalm 83, Lebanon to the north, where you have Hezbollah, who has about 150,000 missiles now pointed at Israel, Syria, where you have the revolution going on, and of course Russia's in Syria now with their footprint, ISIS is in Syria, you've got Iraq, ISIS is in Iraq, you've got Jordan, and you've got the Palestinians, you've got Hamas, which is in the Gaza. Saudi Arabia appears to be, as does Egypt, appear to be also in the Psalm 83 Confederacy. Now, these are the countries that rejected Israel's right to exist, and they voted against them in the United Nations. These are the countries that went to war with Israel in 1948, 67, and 73. These are the countries that Israel is building a fence and wall around all their borders. They're the most fenced-in and fortified country in the world because they're concerned about them. They're not concerned about the Ezekiel 38 invaders. That's not why they're building walls. They're concerned about their Arab enemies that surround them. And everything is imploding and getting out of control over there around Israel. So I'm looking at Psalm 83 as this war. And Asaph, who wrote the psalm, he wrote 12 psalms. And we're told that he was actually a prophet, not just a psalmist, but a prophet. Psalm 83 is his most prophetic psalm. And he says in verses 1 through 5, I'm just going to summarize it, that a time will come when these Arab countries will come together in a confederate effort. They'll form a plan, and their plan is to destroy the nation of Israel, that the name of Israel will be remembered no more. As I said, he lists who they are in verses 6 through 8. He then petitions the Lord to deal with them in verses 9 through 11 as some of the biblical precedent back in the book of Judges when Gideon destroyed the Midianites and you had the destruction of the Canaanites and things like this. So in other words, he's saying empower the Israeli defense forces to stop this affront. And then he goes on to talk about how ultimately that all the people involved in this would ultimately come to know the Lord, that his name is Most High, the one true God of the Bible. So it's a prophecy that I think is about to happen. It can only happen when there's an Israel that can be destroyed. Didn't happen in the Old Testament. Couldn't have happened when Israel didn't exist between 70 AD and 1948 AD. Israel exists today, and these countries are the countries that oppose Israel's existence today. And these countries are the countries why Israel cannot dwell securely. And so I'm thinking to myself, that this war is going to precede Ezekiel 38 to set the stage for that next prophecy of Ezekiel 38.
Well, that's very, very interesting, Bill. Now, there's one last event before the Ezekiel 38 war, and that is the destruction of Damascus. Especially, I think this is very relevant concerning what's going on today in Syria. A lot of Bible students and a lot of Bible prophecy teachers are looking at the prophecies in Isaiah and other places, and reading these prophecies about the coming destruction of Damascus and Syria. Is what's going on right now in Syria, is that the fulfillment of Isaiah 17, or is there something else we should be looking for?
Well, it's not the fulfillment of it because we have specific details in Isaiah 17 and in Jeremiah 49, verses 23 through 27, which gives us clues as to what will really be the cause and fulfillment of this prophecy. Now, Damascus is in a serious state of disarray since the Syrian Revolution in 2011. And as you know, there's refugees scattered all throughout the Middle East now, and it's quite a sad situation. Russia's involved now. ISIS is in Syria. It's just a convoluted mess of chaos over there. But I believe this disaster, this destruction of Damascus is a now prophecy. I believe it could be imminent. There's really no preconditions that stand in the way of it. And so it's important just to look at a few verses to explain why it's a now prophecy and how it happens. And so what it says in Isaiah 17, verse 1, is Damascus will someday cease from being a city. It will be a ruinous heap. It literally means reduced to rubble. And we see the Syria, Damascus, which is the capital of Syria, the oldest continuously inhabited city, goes back about 4,000 years in recorded history, is in a really bad situation right now. There's a lot of destruction and devastation going on. But it's not the Syrian revolution that causes that, because we're told in verse 9 that the desolation is caused by the children of Israel, the Israeli Defense Forces, okay? So that's one of our big clues right there. Now, I'll tell you why that's significant when we talk about the rhetoric going on between Syria and Israel these days. But lastly, I want to say this. In verse 14, it says, one night you see Damascus, but in the morning he is gone. Okay, so it's an overnight defeat of Damascus. Okay, now just quickly so you know, Israel has been attacking Syria. Syria says, if you continue to attack us, we will take out Tel Aviv. And Israel's response is, we will take out Damascus. So I would encourage your listeners to be watching the news in this area. I think we might see the destruction of Damascus fairly soon.
Well, we're going to pick up next time. I have a juicy question I'm sure you've been asked 1,000 times. Where is America in Bible prophecy? Well, I don't have enough time for you to give an adequate answer, so be thinking about that. We'll be dealing with that next week. Well, we are out of time for today. Bill, thanks for being on the broadcast today. And for our listeners, we will continue our discussion on next week's program. We have been talking with Bill Salus about his amazing new book and DVD entitled The Now Prophecies. The focus of this material is on biblical prophecies that will most likely be fulfilled in the near future. And I'm sure as a listener, you will want to have both the book and DVD to share with your family, your friends, and your Bible study group. And now Jerry Giltner will share how you can obtain the Now Prophecies.
Thank you, David. Everyone definitely needs a copy of the book, the DVD, or both for an understanding of what's happening prophetically today. We'll send a copy of the book for a gift of $21. The DVD is offered for a donation of $20. Better yet, get both at the same time when you send a $33 contribution. To get them, call 1-405-604-5975. Web address is swpm.us. Write to Box 58043, Oklahoma City, Oklahoma 73157. The DVD and the book both identify and explain the biblical prophecies that were written ages ago for this generation. You'll have a better understanding of the Old Testament prophecies, and that'll help you in your daily walk with Christ. The DVD gives a visual and oral presentation of the vital information found in the book. Call, write, or go on the internet today and request your copy of the Now Prophecies book, DVD, or both. Here are the 3 ways to contact Southwest Prophecy Ministries. Phone 1-405-604-5975. Web address is swpm.us, or write to Box 58043, Oklahoma City, Oklahoma 73157. No matter how you get in touch with us, please let us know the call letters of this station. We'll be back at this time next weekend with Bill Salus, so make plans to join us for another informative and helpful program as we occupy until Jesus comes.